What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today I got another really awesome drone comparison video for you guys. As you can see right here, we have the DJI Mavic 3 Pro versus the DJI Air 3. So without further ado, let's get into it. So with all my drone comparison videos, I really like to start broad and provide some context and some backstory as to why I'm making this video and why I bought these drones in the first place. I think by providing some backstory, it's gonna help you guys kind of more understand why I got these drones and what I truly think of the difference between each of them are and why they're both very different tools, but also they're very similar as well. So firstly, let's start off with the DJI Mavic 3 Pro. And I got this drone first actually. And some backstory was basically my first DJI drone was the Mavic Air 2. And that was a great drone to start off on. I mean, that drone records 4K 30, flies really well, has good battery life, really easy to use, great connection, takes great pictures. But basically what happened was I lent it to one of my friends actually, and he actually crashed it in like the Yosemite area, and I never got that thing back. So after that, I wanted to find a new drone for myself. And probably like about a few months later, maybe a year later, the OG Mavic 3 came out, the one with the two lenses, the 7X and the 1X lens. And that was a great drone to start off. I still have that one actually, and I really like that drone. I mean, I got the RC Pro with it. It was like a workhorse. I flew that thing all around the Bay Area. The camera is really good. It shoots full D-Log, really good at low light, great battery life, and it was just such an amazing drone. So the original DJI Mavic 3 was an absolutely great drone, but me as a tech enthusiast, as a drone pilot, as someone who really likes trying out new things, I really thought that getting the Mavic 3 Pro would be a good idea, because after seeing this 3-lens setup, I've never seen any drone like this. I mean, it looks like the back of the new iPhones. And for me as an aerial cinematographer, I feel like I could really appreciate having 3 different focal lengths. I felt like on the original Mavic 3, the one with the 2 lenses, I felt like the 7x lens was kind of a gimmick because the image quality was just so much different than the main sensor. And honestly, that 7X lens is just a little bit too tight. That 162mm is just not really that practical. And that's why the Mavic 3 Pro was so attractive, because we still have that same 1X lens as the OG Mavic 3, but now we have that really awesome 3X lens, and now we also have that 7X lens too that the OG Mavic 3 was trying to have, but I feel like this one is way more refined because now you can actually shoot in D-Log M, and it just has a much better picture image than the OG Mavic 3, which is kind of sad because they really pushed that on the OG Mavic 3, trying to advertise, oh yeah, we have 2 lens, it's gonna be really awesome, but it kind of sucks because after they released the Mavic 3 Pro, they basically stopped supporting and stopped updating that new lens, any of the picture profiles and stuff on the OG Mavic 3. So that's basically why I got the Mavic 3 Pro. And overall, I'm really happy I got this. Another reason why getting the Mavic 3 Pro was really seamless is because it's basically the same exact ecosystem as the Mavic 3 series of drones. I already had 3 batteries for my Mavic 3 Fly More combo, already had the charger, already had the RC Pro, had all the propellers. All I needed to do was just buy the basic drone. It came with the little DJI RC, which I sold actually. But yeah, it was just really plug and play. Didn't have to buy a bunch of new accessories. So that's another reason why the Mavic 3 Pro was actually a really easy purchase, coming from an existing Mavic 3 owner as well. So next brings me to the DJI Air 3. And this drone is an interesting story because I still bought this drone even though I already have an OG Mavic 3, I have a Mavic 3 Pro, and I still wanted to buy this drone. And the reason why is because I really like the Air series of drones. As I mentioned earlier, my first DJI drone was the Mavic Air 2, and I really like that drone because it's so quiet, it's really lightweight, it's really great for traveling. And once I saw this new Air 3 come out with that 2-lens setup, I was like, this thing's gonna be game changing, because what really attracted to me about the Air 3 is the fact that the 3X lens up here is literally the same lens as the 3X lens on the Mavic 3 Pro. Like, they're basically identical, you can't tell the difference. And I knew I just had to jump the gun on that, and I just knew I had to get it because I really wanted a drone that's a little bit more quieter, a little bit more travel friendly, and just overall, like, just kind of has a smaller footprint. And I think the Air 3 is great for that. And this is actually my main workhorse drone. Like, whenever I'm doing anything like real estate stuff or any stuff that basically just lives on social media, this drone is absolutely perfect because of a multitude of reasons, which we're gonna get into later. But yeah, overall, Air 3 has been great. It's my main workhorse drone for just general small drone stuff. And this drone is definitely more of kind of like my higher quality drone. Like whenever I do gigs that are higher paying or gigs that really care about image quality, that really want that true D-Log, I'm gonna bring out this bad boy because this thing just definitely has better image quality with that Hasselblad sensor on the 1X lens. So yeah, that's some basic backstory as to why I purchased both of these drones. And next, we're gonna get into more of the detailed and more personal differences between these two drones from my personal experience. All right, guys, so the first topic we're gonna talk about is the image quality and cameras between each of the drones. And I think that's really important to talk about with drones because in the end, we're aerial cinematographers. Like we're not just flying around for fun. Our main goal is to get the best shots, the best images, the best footage, the best pictures out of our drones because in the end, these are basically just flying cameras. So that's why firstly, and most importantly, want to discuss the image quality and cameras out of each of the drones. So personally, I think the main difference between both of these drones is the ability to do variable aperture and adjust the aperture on the drone. On the DJI Mavic 3 Pro, it just feels way more professional to be able to change your F number because when you're flying with drones, like the lighting conditions are always changing. You know, sometimes it's backlit into the sun and you want to darken the image. Sometimes you're going the other way and you have to open up. And the DJI Mavic 3 Pro just allows exposure changes to be much more smoother. And most importantly, you're able to maintain that 180-degree shutter much more easier. Whereas on the DJI Air 3, you cannot change your F number. So basically, whenever you want to change exposure, you either have to land, change NDs, or you have to just kind of crank your shutter or open up your shutter. And for most of the shots you do, especially with like kind of wide establishing shots or shots of cities and landscapes, it doesn't really matter because you're just going so slow and there's not too much going on in the image. But I noticed when I was chasing my friend on a motorcycle, like having the correct shutter speed really makes a difference because when you're kind of tracking a subject like a runner or an athlete or a biker, a car, when you don't have that 180-degree shutter, the image definitely feels a little bit jittery, feels a little bit jerky, and just doesn't feel natural to the eye. So that's why the DJI Mavic 3 Pro definitely feels a little bit more premium, much more professional, and it literally allows you to get better footage, especially when you're kind of chasing those intimate subjects and trying to go for that most cinematic motion blur. But as I mentioned, for probably like 80% of the shots you're doing, it doesn't really make a difference. Like when you're doing like orbits around houses or wide landscapes, it really doesn't matter kind of what shutter you're using. So that's a really important thing to note. The next thing I want to talk about is obviously the extra lens we have on here. The DJI Mavic 3 Pro has that additional 7X lens, which is about 162 millimeter length equivalent on full frame. And honestly, I don't really use that lens that much. I know I mentioned in the intro that I thought that I would use it a lot more over the original Mavic 3 because it supports D-Log M and they updated it. But honestly, for like a lot of the stuff I do, like the 7X lens is just a little bit unpractical. You know, it's a little bit too tight. And in addition, it's actually a little bit shaky. I'm not sure if you guys get the same results, but whenever I use a 7X lens, I'm not sure if it's because it's really windy in the Bay Area right now, but the footage always looks a little bit jittery, a little bit shaky, whereas the 3X lens and the 1X lens are buttery smooth on this drone. So for that reason, I kind of stay away from the 7X lens. And yeah, it's just way too tight for my taste sometimes. But when I do use it, the image quality is actually not bad. Like it actually matches pretty well to the 3X lens and the 1X lens because you still have that D-Log M, which is actually really easy to work with. So I actually do like using it sometimes when the shot calls for it. All right guys, so another really important distinction between these two drones are the fact that the DJI Mavic 3 Pro or any of the DJI Mavic 3 series drones for that matter can shoot in full DJI D-Log, whereas the DJI Air 3 only shoots in D-Log M, which is kind of more of an intermediary picture profile. It's kind of in between D-Log and Rec 709. Whereas D-Log is much more flatter, much more unsaturated, and I think it provides much more richer colors, and it makes it easier to match with other cameras and do really cool film looks, and provides more freedom in post for add in your own LUTs and your own cinematic looks, but overall they are pretty similar and it is easy to match between the two. I think D-Log comes in handy when you're working on those more professional sets, like when you're working on professional sets where they're matching it to like an FX6 or RED cameras or ARRI cameras. Shooting in the D-Log just provides more color rendition, more color depth, and a more professional codec for them to work with in post. So I think by having the D-Log, it is a good selling point because you can kind of push it to your clients and kind of show them that it's gonna be easier to match the cameras. The DJI D-Log M will work as well, but it's just not as professional and not as flat as the D-Log regular. So I think that's a really important thing to note. All right guys, so number 2 on the list between the DJI Air 3 versus the DJI Mavic 3 Pro is the transmission and connection. And I think that that's a really important thing to consider when flying drones because, I mean, sometimes you really take it for granted, but flying a drone is pretty crazy. I mean, we're controlling this wireless camera that can go really far from us. It can go any altitude. It can get any types of shots. And I think that's really crazy to think about. So that's why I really love drone filmmaking. But I think the transmission on the drone is a really important factor to consider. On the DJI Mavic 3 Pro, we are utilizing O3 transmission, whereas on the DJI Air 3, we're using O4 transmission. I know it's a little bit confusing, but there actually is a big difference. When I got the DJI Air 3, I didn't really expect there to be that much of a difference because the DJI Mavic 3 Pro is already really good. You can go pretty freaking far with that thing, but switching over to the O4 transmission, I was really impressed. Like, whenever I fly the DJI Air 3, like it's actually really rare for me to lose connection. Like unless I'm really far away and there's a lot of interference like buildings or trees, you're not really gonna lose connection. Like you might go down to 1 bar in the red, but you barely ever lose full connection and trigger return to home. On the DJI Mavic 3 Pro, although the connection is really good, it is pretty easy to actually lose connection and it is kind of scary. Like, I always trust that the drone's gonna come back, but there's always that scary moment when you lose connection and you're just staring at the screen. It went gray and it's probably like 10-15 seconds before you regain connection and it's coming to home. And that's kind of a uneasy feeling. You're just standing there. It feels like time is forever, you know, like you don't know, maybe like a bird hit it, maybe it crashed, but you're just kind of praying the image is gonna come back. And thankfully it always does, but it's not a really great feeling to have. And I think a really good example of this was the last flight we did the other day, where we launched from Grizzly Peak and it was really foggy on the mountain, but we launched the drones through the fog above the clouds and we got some awesome shots at sunset. But I think the flight really demonstrated how much better the O4 transmission is compared to the DJI Mavic 3 O3 transmission. There was so much fog in between the drone and the controller, and I lost connection probably like 2 times. Like, I wasn't even that far, but the fog really kind of created this like really dense environment that wasn't really great for the RC signal. And I lost connection twice and it was pretty frustrating because I was trying to get these really sick shots where I was kind of going low to the clouds, trying to get some really nice kind of foreground in my shot. And I kept losing connection and it was really hindering my creative process. Like it kept wasting battery, I was losing light, and I felt kind of restricted on the shots I could get. Whereas when Yusuke was on the DJI Air 3, he didn't lose connection once. I mean, his connection went down to the red probably a few times, but not once was return to home triggered. So I think that shows a lot about the difference between the O4 and the O3 transmission. So that's a really important thing to note. And since right now we're already on the topic of controllers, I quickly want to talk about the RC Pro versus the RC2 that the Air 3 came with. And I think that these are both great controllers. Like originally, I wasn't really that excited about this controller because I already used the one that came with the DJI Mavic 3 Pro, which is basically the first version of this one. And I didn't like it because it's super laggy. It just, I don't know, it just didn't feel that professional, didn't feel that great. But honestly, this thing is awesome. This seems like a mini RC Pro. The connection's amazing, as I mentioned, and actually feels really precise. Like I feel really in control and I can get really creative on these sticks. And I really like how easy it is to set up. Don't need any phone. And I haven't tried it yet, but you could actually use this USB-C as kind of like an HDMI out, I believe. I'm pretty sure you could hook up an iPad to this and then do like a video out in addition to having this screen as well. So I think that's a pretty cool feature about this thing. I do love flying the Mavic 3 drones because I can use the RC Pro. This thing legit feels super professional. It feels a little bit more heavy duty. The sticks feel a little bit more precise than this one. I don't know why, but it just feels a little bit better. I'm not sure it's because the drone flies a little bit better, but I just really like the feeling of the DJI RC Pro. And in addition, you have a little bit more customizability. You have more little buttons here. You have a little 5D wheel right here. And what's really cool is you have the HDMI mini out. So I don't do this too often, but it's actually really cool. I have a special mount for my controller where I could actually mount an external monitor, like a 5-inch or 7-inch monitor. And I do want to try this out pretty soon, but I think it's gonna be really awesome to hook up like an external monitor, like my Atmos Shinobi here, and display my main camera feed right here. And then for this screen down here, I can display my vision assist sensors. And I think that's gonna be really helpful because down here, I can maximize and expand my vision assist right here. And then I could see my main image on here, so I could fly a lot safer. Because right now, without the monitor, when I'm trying to get my shots, it is kind of hard to just look at that tiny little vision assist down here. I wish I could make it a little bit bigger because it does get the job done, you know, but I mean, in case there's like any wires or any kind of more dangerous and smaller obstacles that I might crash into, I think by being able to expand it is gonna make flying a lot safer and make me feel a lot more confident to get more and better shots during my flight. So yeah, overall, RC Pro is definitely more fun to fly. Like whenever I have an excuse to fly the Mavic 3, I'm always kind of excited to use this thing because it just feels really premium, feels really great, has a great battery life. But yeah, I mean, if you're on a budget, this thing also works really well. It is a little bit upsetting that I can't use the DJI Air 3 with this one because they're technically on different transmissions, but yeah, this is like a mini RC Pro right here. So I mean, gets the job done. Definitely isn't as premium as this, but still a great remote overall. All right guys, so on to the final and third topic of today's video, which is another really important factor of drones, which is the battery life. I feel like battery life is really important because battery life determines how many shots you can get, how confident you can feel in the air, how reliable the drone is. I mean, it's the lifeline of your aircraft. It keeps this thing from falling into the ocean. It keeps this thing able to fly super high in the air. So I think battery life and batteries are really important when it comes to drones especially. All right, so as you can see right here, we have the DJI Mavic 3 batteries in the battery hub. And right here, we have the DJI Air 3 and Air 3 battery hub. And they both work the same way in the sense that when you plug them in, they only charge one battery at a time. They always start with the highest charged battery first. I think the biggest difference between the battery hub is the fact that this one is actually pretty cool. This thing actually doubles as a external battery pack. For example, if you want to charge your phone or you want to charge your controller, you can actually just plug in a USB-C right here and you could just use this as a power bank, which is actually really awesome. This thing, you cannot do that actually. It's much more basic and yeah, much more simple honestly. At first, some people didn't like this thing because it's a little bit more robust. People were kind of expecting something smaller like this, but actually I kind of like this thing because once you have all the 3 batteries in here, it just fits really nicely in your bag, in the little kind of A3 bag. Whereas this thing, it's not really that great for actually storing it. It's good for just kind of charging and just keeping it on desk or something, but when it comes to putting it in your bag, it's not great. This thing is actually a much better solution for transporting your batteries. But yeah, overall, both battery hubs basically do the same thing. I mean, obviously this one has some cooler features. You can use it as an external battery hub. You can press this little button right here and it'll show you all the levels on the battery. That's pretty cool. You can't do that on this thing. But overall, they're just battery hubs. They just charge your batteries. It's not really that big of a deal. Next, we're gonna talk about the battery life of each of the drones. So the battery life on the DJI Mavic 3 Pro is pretty good. Like the advertised flight time is about 45 minutes, but we all know DJI, that's definitely exaggerated. In real world usage, depends on how I'm flying, I usually get around like 15 to 20 minutes if I'm lucky, which is not bad. I mean, I come from FPV where I only fly for like 5 minutes. So all of these DJI drones are absolutely amazing and I get enough battery life with this thing, honestly. But I feel like the Air 3 definitely pushes the limits on battery life. I mean, I wasn't expecting this, but when I fly the DJI Air 3, you could literally fly for like 30 minutes or more. Like, I don't know what it is about this new technology. I think it's mainly because the drone is a little bit lighter, I think a lot lighter actually, and also I think the camera computing power is a little bit lower because, I don't know, I mean, just look at the gimbal on this thing. It's heavier, bigger lens, you know, it just feels heavier, you know. But yeah, the Air 3 battery never ceases to amaze me. Like, there's certain jobs where I really appreciate having the long battery life. For example, I recently was hired to shoot a wedding in Half Moon Bay, and it was like an Indian wedding, and the ceremony was super long. And I brought both of my drones. I was gonna use the Mavic 3 Pro just because it has that better image quality, but once I saw the environment I was in and the kind of context I was in, the Air 3 served to be a much better drone because the ceremony was really long and there's a ton of people everywhere. So I wanted to be really quiet. I wanted to have a little bit better transmission because I was flying from inside the building. And most importantly, I wanted my battery life to be a lot better because I didn't want to miss any of the ceremony. And having the Air 3 was absolutely awesome because the ceremony was like an hour long and I only used like 2 batteries. Like, I used one battery to get all this B-roll of all this stuff getting set up, and during the actual ceremony where they were dancing and doing all the rituals, like, I only used another battery after that, and I was able to just stay in the air and not have to worry about my battery life. I mean, that's really awesome, and it allows me to really relax and just get all the shots I need. If I was using the Mavic 3 Pro, I would have to land like every 15 minutes, and that's kind of annoying because you have to go outside, land, you know, everyone's looking at you, cause a distraction. Whereas the Air 3, this thing can just stay in the air like a workhorse and just keep getting those shots without even having to think about the battery. So for certain jobs, the Air 3 is absolutely amazing. I also recently did a job this past weekend where I was filming like this horse event in Pleasanton. I bought both drones again, but definitely use the Air 3 because it was like a lot of people. I want to be quieter. I don't really like it when people look at me when I'm flying, or I don't like it when people notice the drone too much. I mean, people still notice this thing. I mean, it's still a drone, it still makes a sound, but it's just substantially quieter, much smaller footprint than the Mavic 3 Pro. So yeah, as I mentioned, for certain jobs, this thing is just absolutely great. And especially if it's just like a simple social media edit, you really can't really tell the difference between both of these drones, especially when you put on Instagram, Facebook, because those platforms really compress the image and they really just end up looking the same. So for that reason, that's why I really like the Air 3. In addition, I use this thing for real estate because for real estate, I mean, that stuff all lives on social media. I like to be kind of nimble and quiet because a lot of the times I'm launching in these kind of suburban neighborhoods. I don't want any Karens on me. I don't want anyone kind of messing with me, and battery life is absolutely great. And yeah, just lighter in my bag, easier to set up, and yeah, just a really great drone to have. All right, awesome. So that's basically all the kind of technical stuff and personal experience stuff I want to talk about, comparing the DJI Mavic 3 Pro and the Air 3. But overall, I just kind of want to reflect on how I feel about these drones and what I learned from making this video. So basically, me and Yusuke went out to San Francisco because I want to get some really good shots of each of the drones. And actually, I learned a lot because one thing that's really interesting about the Bay Area is the weather is always changing. I mean, it's been really windy here. Sometimes it's really cloudy and sometimes it's really dismal. But I realized that with drone filmmaking, like, it's not about luck, you know, like to get good shots with drones, like you really have to kind of like just like put the camera up and see what looks good, you know. Like, I got some really great shots in San Francisco. It looked really great when the clouds started coming in and I was above the clouds pointing down. That looked amazing. But this especially made sense to me when I launched in Berkeley and Grizzly Peak, because if you guys know Grizzly Peak, when you get there, sometimes it's really foggy, and to the average person, the average photographer would be like, yeah, let's get out of here. I mean, there's nothing to see. But that's why drones are so cool for filmmaking, because even though it was so cloudy, so foggy on that mountain, I just had a feeling that if I put the drone up and above the fog, it would look amazing, because I already did a flight earlier in San Francisco where I saw the clouds there coming in, and it looked really great when you're above the clouds, because it looks like kind of like a God's point of view. It looks really ethereal. It looks really outer worldly. So I just had a feeling like, you know what? I know it's kind of foggy here on the mountain, but I'm gonna go ahead and launch this thing up and see what looks good. And to our surprise, it looked really awesome. I mean, it looked like a whole sea of clouds. It looks like what you see from an airplane when you're flying. like an international flight or wherever you're going. Like it just looked so beautiful up there. And that's where I realized the power of DJI drones, you know, like you guys know me, I'm a big FPV guy. I love flying FPV, but the more I fly drones, the more I realize like each drone is really a tool, and you know, each drone really provides different images compared to another one, you know, like for example, at Grizzly Peak, like I wouldn't want to fly my 7-inch there, even though it's a long range drone, has pretty good battery life, has good image transmission. There's features on these DJI drones that FPV drones just can't really compete with right now. For example, is the home point ability. Like obviously on FPV drones, you could set up, you know, return to home features with a GPS on Betaflight, but let's be honest, it's not as reliable. It's not as rock solid as the DJI system. And flying in that fog, that was really important, because if you don't have that home point recorded, I literally probably would have lost my drone, because when you're up there in the clouds, it's so hard to see your way back. I mean, I think the scariest part about flying in the clouds is when you're coming back down to land, it feels so scary because you literally can't really see where you're going. You might hit a tree. And actually I almost crashed into a tree when I was trying to land because I wasn't exactly sure what the orientation of my home point was. And when I was trying to come back in the fog, I assumed that I was in front of me in the open space, but I was actually coming in behind me over this kind of hill area with the trees. And I was just kind of going in, descending. And thankfully I was able to see the trees at the last second, and I was in sport mode. And even if it was in normal mode, I don't think the sensor would have worked because it's so foggy, so dark. So that's why the home point and the return home features on these DJI drones are so game changing, because let's be honest, like I wouldn't be able to get the same shots I was today with FPV drones. I mean, they're just not really made for that right now. You know, like obviously FPV is amazing for really fast, kind of close proximity shots, really cool low shots. I mean, the look on FPV is just, you can't really compete with that. But for certain shots, like shots in the city, these shots above the clouds, I mean, I literally would not feel comfortable, and I literally couldn't get those shots with my FPV. And in addition, having these DJI drones is really cool for practicing cinematography, because you're able to change your settings up there. You can change your F number, you can change your ISO, you can change all that good stuff. Whereas on FPV, you just kind of set it and forget it, you know, because you set the GoPro settings just once and then you just find the pack and just hope that it looks good. But DJI drones really help you kind of practice your cinematography, dial in your settings, see what looks good, and just be really customizable with your camera settings and getting that really nice slow cinematic movement, getting those cool parallax with the different lenses. So yeah, they're very different drones, and I think any good pilot is gonna have both, because I know I always talk about this, but I feel like being a drone pilot is kind of like being like a kung fu master, you know, like you don't want to be that guy that just is good at like, you know, hand-to-hand combat. Like a true master knows how to use nunchucks, they know how to use a spear, sword, they could do like groundwork, they could do kicking, all this stuff, you know. So like I think the same thing applies to a drone pilot. Like you want to be able to fly a 2.5-inch Cinewhoop with a naked GoPro. You want to be able to fly a 7-inch with a full-size GoPro. You want to be able to fly a Mavic 3 Pro. You want to be familiar with flying an Air 3 or a Cinelifter FPV with a Komodo. I mean, each of these jobs come with different requirements, and that's why it's so good to just have a whole fleet of drones. So you always have the right drone for the job, and you're not going to be overkill with using like a really expensive drone for a job that just doesn't need it, you know. So that's why it's really important to have a bunch of different drones, because I know they are kind of expensive, but in the end they do kind of pay off. So yeah. All right guys, so that's basically all I have for you for today. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys learned something from this. I've been doing a ton of drone stuff lately, experimenting with FPV, flying these Mavic things for work. So I really want to share the knowledge, kind of give you guys my real world experience on how I feel about these drones, how my career is doing, what I'm up to. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please hit that like button, hit subscribe, it really helps out the channel, and I'll see you guys on the next one.